Hey guys, have you ever been in a position where life is at an all-time high? You're absolutely crushing it at work, your relationships are fun and fulfilling, your house is clean, you're going to the gym, you're eating well, things seem to be in perfect order. But then slowly something happens. You get some bad news, or maybe you just have an off day, or you miss the gym, or it's just hard to get out of bed. And then slowly you start to spiral deeper into this hole, and you get into a rut. You wake up every morning and you can't get out of bed, or you haven't gone to the gym in 2 weeks, or you're getting takeout every single night and you're feeling purposeless at work. And suddenly you start contemplating and thinking about, what the heck am I even doing here, right? You get so deep into that hole and sometimes you can stay there. And in this video, what I want to talk to you guys about is how you can get out of that hole when you're stuck in a rut, how to get out of it quickly and get back on track. So first and foremost, the first idea I want to talk to you guys about is it's okay to not be okay. A lot of the times I think we stay inside these ruts a lot longer than we need to because we're trying to force ourselves to get out of it, right? We tell ourselves it's not okay to be in this rut. I need to get better. I need to get out of this. But that only makes us feel worse. And then we kind of go spiral further and further down. What's really important to acknowledge is that nobody's great all the time. I don't care if you're Tony Robbins, I don't care if you're Elon Musk, I don't care who you are. Everybody moves in cyclical patterns of being up and down, and it's completely natural to fall into these ruts. The only thing we want to keep in mind about these ruts is that we don't want to stay there. We want to feel them completely, let that pass through us, and get back up to the next peak. And so when I say it's okay to not be okay, it's okay to be in a rut. Everybody sits on the couch and watches Netflix and eats Cheetos every once in a while. I know I do it. I'm sure you do it too, right? And when we try to resist, what we resist persists. When we try to resist not being okay, it ends up getting worse and we end up staying there longer than we need to. And I think the first thing we need to acknowledge is that it's okay to miss the gym every once in a while. It's okay to sleep in and roll around in bed and not want to get up and do anything. You need to sometimes be low so we can then move forward and get up, right? But it's okay to be it's okay to not be okay, and you should, accept that, right? Live in that a little bit. It's okay to not have to be on top of your game every single day, as long as we don't stay there. So the first thing when we're in a rut that we need to do is accept that it's okay to not be okay and stay there a little bit. Lean into that, right? Let yourself not be okay for a little bit so that it doesn't stay for a month or a couple of weeks. You can end up staying there just for a day or a few hours and then end up making your way out of that rut. So that's the first idea that I want to share with you guys. All right, now the second idea I want to share with you is the two brains that we have that we're fighting against. When we get into these ruts, actually before I even get there, Jonathan Haidt, he's a professor out of NYU, has a really great analogy for the two different brains that we have. And if you guys have been on this channel, you've heard me talk about this before, but we have two different sides or types to our brain. We have our rational brain and we have our emotional brain. And Jonathan tells us that we need to think of this as a human rider sitting on top of an elephant, okay? Now, the rider represents our rational thinking mind, right? It's the one that likes spreadsheets and planning and is much more analytical and logical in its thinking, right? It's the one that says, these are the 5 different businesses that I can start, or these are the 10 ways that I can get to work or solve this problem, right? It's a thinking, analytical mind. The elephant represents the emotional mind. The emotional mind is the one that's ruled by emotion. It's the one that wants to snooze when you know you need to get up and get to that workout. It's the one that grabs the cookie even though you're on a diet, right? It's the one that wants to procrastinate and put work off until tomorrow so you can sit and play video games today or whatever it might have you, right? Now the reality is that no matter what the rider tries to do to pull the elephant in a certain direction, the rider is outweighed by the elephant by like 10 times, right? If the elephant doesn't want to do something, if your emotional mind doesn't want to do something, you're not going to do it. So the goal is that we need to get our emotional and our logical mind, our rational mind, in congruence with one another in order to get where we want to go. Now, when we're stuck in a rut, our two minds are at ends with one another. Our rational mind, as we're sitting there laying on the couch feeling bad for ourselves or feeling stuck, is saying, hey man, you need to get up. You need to go for a workout. You got deadlines. You got shit to do. You got to eat healthier, blah, 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 right? And all we're doing is we're making ourselves feel guiltier for being in that rut. And it can seem really evil to our emotional mind when we're constantly beating ourselves up for being in this rut. Our emotional mind is saying, God, it's hard to get out of bed today. I'll do it tomorrow, right? I don't really want to go to the gym. it's really difficult to put my clothes on and go talk to my trainer or even lift any weights. I'm just gonna put it off until tomorrow. Or I don't wanna eat healthy. I'm just gonna, get some Ben & Jerry's, or I'm gonna eat Cheetos, right? You can see the two minds at work here. We have our rational mind who's saying, hey man, I know you need to do this. And our emotional mind says, that seems way too big of a challenge for me to try and do. I'm gonna stay right here. And what a rut really is part of the psychology behind it is our emotional mind looks at the things that we know we should be doing as big, scary objects that are just too much work to deal with right now. And so what we need to understand from a psychological standpoint is when we're in a rut, we need to try and not scare our emotional mind. Our emotional mind is in a really fragile place because everything looks big and scary to get out of this rut. And what we need to do is slowly coax our emotional mind out of the rut by starting really, really small, which leads me to the third idea that I want to share with you guys. So the third idea that I want to share with you guys is a concept introduced by James Clear in his book, Atomic Habits. And since we already talked about the two minds we have, it's called reduce the scope and keep the schedule. So our emotional mind is super fragile. Everything seems difficult when we're in a rut, right? We don't want to talk to anybody. We just want to sit and, eat Ben & Jerry's and hang it on the couch, or we put things off and procrastinate into the future. Well, when we talk about reducing the scope and keeping the schedule, what I want you guys to do is still do the thing that you know you should be doing, but make it so easy you can't not do it. And the point of doing this is that we're getting our emotional mind to a place where it doesn't seem so scary to get off the couch and go for a walk, or go exercise, or eat healthy, or do a little bit of work that you know you need to be doing. Reduce the scope and keep the schedule, right? We want to make the thing so small that our elephant, our emotional mind says, okay, I guess I could do that, right? I guess I could go on a walk, right? What I want you guys to do is start so small that it doesn't seem significant enough to make a difference, right? So instead of saying, I know I need to go exercise for an hour, maybe you just go for a walk around the block. Instead of saying, I need to complete that project that I know I need to work on, maybe you just pull out your phone and send a couple emails. Or maybe you just open up your computer and just open up the Google Doc to get started, right? And what we're doing is we're slowly making progress and making it seem less scary to start getting out of that rut. We're keeping our emotional mind coaxed to the point where we don't get scared and standoffish, right? To give you an example, I hate doing laundry. I've had laundry, I'm looking at it right now, sitting on my couch for 2 weeks. Now my emotional mind is saying, I don't want to do that. I don't know if you can swear. Hopefully we can bleep that out. I don't want to fold that laundry and put that away. And so what I do is I start by just folding one shirt, right? And that seems super easy. And then maybe I'll fold another shirt later in the day. And slowly I start doing my laundry in ways that seem really insignificant. And this leads me to the fourth idea that I want to share with you guys. Now, the fourth idea I want to share with you for getting out of a rut and getting unstuck is the momentum loop. This is an idea that I learned from my man, Tony Robbins, and this really builds off of everything else we've been talking about. So the reason we want to reduce the scope and keep the schedule is because we're going to be building momentum to basically blast off out of this rut that we're in, okay? Do you guys like that motion that I did? This is you blasting off, okay? So what we're doing by reducing the scope and keeping the schedule is starting so small. Let me show you how the momentum loop works, okay? Basically, you feel motivated, you take action, and those action leads to results. And so the more results you get, the more motivated you feel. The more motivated you feel, the more action you take, and then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'll give you a couple examples. You can't be bothered to put your laundry away, but you start folding a couple shirts, right? And when you start folding a couple shirts, you start seeing that you're making progress on that pile. That progress in the pile motivates you to want to do more of the laundry. So you do a little bit more, you get more results, you get more motivated, you take more action, you get more results, suddenly the laundry pile is done, right? You absolutely love it. That's called building momentum. But it can also work in the opposite way, right? When we're sitting on the couch watching Netflix, eating Cheetos, right? You look at yourself and you're like, I'm a lazy piece of crap, right? That makes you less motivated to do anything, so you end up staying on the couch longer. Maybe you start scrolling TikTok and Instagram. You feel even worse about yourself. It makes you want to take even less action, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy the opposite way. And so when we're stuck in a rut, what we want to do is build momentum to get us out of the hole and propel us into the place that we know we need to be. And so when we start building momentum, the reason that we're speaking to our emotional mind, shrinking the gap and reducing the scope and keeping the schedule is to start building momentum so we get from a place of just getting out of the house and brushing our teeth to getting into our normal workout routine, getting back to crushing work, doing the things that we know we need to do. So we need to build momentum by taking action, increasing the motivation, and getting better results, right? It's that loop that we just talked about that gets us out of the hole. So the fifth idea I want to talk to you guys is an idea that I learned from a guy named Dan Sullivan, He runs a group called Strategic Coaching or something like that, but it's called it's called measuring the gain, not the gap. A lot of us, when we're in the hole, when we're stuck, when we're in a rut feeling sorry for ourselves, we're taking a look at where we are now and where we know we should be, where we've been before. And that gap seems really big. That's what's called measuring the gap. But we're in a rut. It does us no good to constantly compare ourselves and berate ourselves for where we were before. We just need to get the momentum and get out of the hole and get unstuck. And so what we need to do is we need to measure the gain. The gain is where you are right now and where you were beforehand. So when we start just folding a couple pieces of clothing, or we just start going for a walk around the block, or maybe we have one serving of broccoli, to get us back in our routine, we're measuring ourselves against who we were yesterday to feel good about ourselves instead of constantly comparing ourselves to where we know we should be. Because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy when you're constantly beating yourself up saying, I know I should be up here, but I'm right here. Instead, look at who you were yesterday. Did you fold a couple more shirts than you did yesterday? Did you go on a couple more walks than you did the day before? Did you get started on that project and get a little bit more progress than you were the day before? Great. You can hang your hat on that and feel really good about yourself because you're getting better. And you get better and better to the point where you get back to the place where you know you need to be, but you will never get there if you're constantly comparing yourself to who you once were or who you know you're capable of being versus looking at who you were yesterday, right? That's how we build momentum. It's called measuring the gain, not the gap. The gap will make you feeling frustrated, disappointed, angry, but looking at the gain will make you feel inspired. It'll show you that you are getting better and you're making progress towards your goal. Now, the sixth idea that I absolutely love, this is my favorite idea, is celebrate wildly. When you start building momentum, when you start measuring the gain, not the gap, I want you guys to celebrate wildly and congratulate yourself when you do the little things that end up getting you out of the hole. This is an idea that was inspired by BJ Fogg's Tiny Habits. He calls getting your shine on, right? What happens when we congratulate ourselves and celebrate ourselves, which beforehand, just an FYI, I hated doing. I thought it was the stupidest thing ever, right? Can you imagine patting yourself on the back for taking a shower or folding clothes? But the reality is that when we celebrate ourselves, we set off a reward circuit, a dopamine rush that rewards and wires in that activity to make us feel better about it the next time we do it. We get a rush of excitement and reward when we celebrate ourselves that make us want to do that activity in the future. And when we fire and wire those actions together at a deeper level, it gets easier and easier to do because we want to do it more, because we feel great about it. So I want you guys to absolutely celebrate every time you do something that seems small or insignificant that gets you out of the rut. I don't care if that's folding clothes. I don't care if that's doing the dishes. I don't care if that's going for a block. I like to pat myself on the back and say yes. Like, that's my thing that I do. I don't care what you guys do. It could be a fist bump, it could be a hip thrust, it could be a jump up in the air, it could be a quiet nod and solidarity with yourself. Whatever it is, make sure you celebrate, because the more you celebrate, the better you're gonna feel and the greater you're gonna wire in those activities together to make you wanna do it in the future. Very, very important. And so the last idea that I want to share with you guys is I want to synthesize this all together and basically create a little story, an example of what this would look like in theory, okay? So I want to give you guys an example of a client that I was working with that was stuck in a rut and how we worked together to get her out of this place. So I was working with the client. She's in her late 20s. She's a real estate person here in Detroit, and we needed to get her out of a rut, right? She used to be at the top. She was closing deals all the time, working out, going to whatever bar, Orange Theory class that she was going to, and feeling absolutely great. Now she came to me and she said, I'm in a rut. My sales are down, I'm not exercising, I'm eating like shit, and I feel like my dating life is completely kaput. So what can we do? So this is the first thing that we work together. First and foremost, we acknowledge that it's an okay place to be in a rut. You can't be at the top all the time. Even the best of us rest sometimes, right? Nobody works 24/7 all the time. It's a series of sprints and rest. So we acknowledge that it's okay for her to be where she is right now. The second thing we did is we took a look and said, okay, what are some things that we can do to get out of the rut, right? What are some ways that we can coax the emotional mind into being okay and not spooked about getting out of the rut, and have our rational mind give us a little bit of empathy to make some progress slowly? So what we decided to do was that she was just gonna wake up in the morning and she was gonna go for a walk around the block, right? What she ended up doing was listening to her favorite podcast and walking for 10 minutes. It was a 10-minute podcast. She's gonna wake up and walk. It seems really, really small and insignificant, but it was enough to get her out of the house, get her blood pumping, make her feel good about she accomplished something early in the day, and start making a little bit of progress, right? I'm not saying go to an Orange Theory class. I'm not saying spend an hour at a bar, but she was able to make a little bit of progress. And so she did that for a week. Felt really, really great about herself. kept that schedule up. Every single night, I had her journal one win from the day. How did she get a little bit better, 1% incremental gain from who she was yesterday? Maybe she had an extra serving of vegetables, or maybe what else did she do? She meditated, or she called a friend or a family member, right? And that made her feel great. And she slowly was getting a little bit further and further out of this rut. So we had her measuring the gain, not the gap. And then lastly, every time she sent me a win, what I wanted her to do was celebrate wildly. As soon as she sent that text message to me saying, this is what I accomplished today, I wanted her to give her a pat on the back, right? And slowly those wins started to escalate. It literally took a week from her to being in a rut to getting back where she was before. And this is what it looks like in real time for you guys as well. So if you're feeling in a rut, if you were at the top of your game and now you're stuck, these are the things you need to do. First and foremost, acknowledge who you are. Understand that you have a rider and an elephant in your brain, and you need to coax that elephant to, basically not be as scared and as fragile, and slowly work out of that hole. You do that by reducing the scope and keeping the schedule, right? So you do little wins, you start building that momentum loop, you measure the gain, not the gap, and you celebrate wildly. So I hope you guys like this video. Let me know what you guys are struggling with for getting out of the hole, or getting unstuck, or getting out of the rut that you're in. I'd love to hear from you and help in any way that I can. So hopefully I'll talk to you guys soon.